Thank you for joining us for another episode of Thank You for You.
where every story matters.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for this episode of Thank You for You. Today we have a special treat. Our very own K10 will be giving us a story today. Hey, K10.
Hey, Whitney, how are you?
Good. I'm so excited to hear your story. So, everyone, I haven't even heard the story yet. So, whenever you get started, we're ready to hear.
Okay, cool. So, my story is about my journey to getting to know myself. I always felt like I had no clue what was going on in life, basically. Um, I literally, how I look at it is like I've always wanted to know what the fuck was wrong with me. I've always felt like different. And I'm sure probably a lot of people have had these thoughts, like in your journey to getting to know yourself. Like for me growing up, I grew up with my mom who, she literally, like, for me when I was growing up before I knew any better, she just looked like a white person. And then my dad is a person of color. So to me, like, figuring out race and who I was as far as a color or identifying with a color was very confusing for me. But at the same time, it wasn't something that I felt was very important because I was fortunate enough to grow up in a city where there were always kids of different races in my school. So I grew up around people of color, Caucasian people, Hispanics, like people with different religious backgrounds. I just didn't know exactly where I fit in with that, and I never really asked a lot of questions to my parents or anything. And then, like, as far as, like, I remember when I was really young, I was at my grandmother's house with my brothers, and it had just rained, and we were outside playing in some water that was dripping down from the roof of some buildings. And my brothers, like, had taken off their shirts, and they were, like, in the rain, and I did the same thing. And I remember it's like some minutes later, my grandma came out, and she was yelling at me, and I didn't understand why. And she was like, "You're a girl, you can't have your shirt off." And I just never understood why. And I remember asking, like, "Well, they can do it, why can't I do it?" And she was like, "You just can't, you're a girl." And, like, I never understood why guys could do certain things that girls couldn't do, and that's something that stuck with me for a very long time because the answer never made sense to me when I would ask questions. And similar on that same note, like with religion, I grew up in a very Christian household growing up. Well, we were Catholic first and then moved to non-denominational Christian. And I had a lot of questions about the church, and I really never got, like, answers other than just because. So, like, I feel like every time I would question something that was told to me, I would never get an answer that helped me understand. So I always just felt so lost and confused about, like, why things happen the way they happen and exist the way they exist in the world. So, and that's kind of, I don't know, mentality, or just that's a theme that's just followed me throughout life. I remember in, like, high school and middle school, kids would always talk about, like, my friends would always talk about, like, they're dating people and in relationships, and, like, that just wasn't ever something that I was concerned with or something that ever, like, came up for me in my mind, like, oh, I want to date this person. And I kind of really didn't know what it even meant to, like, quote unquote date someone or whatever, especially in school. I'm like, it just was nothing. It was nothing that I was concerned with in my life. Um, and I kind of felt on the outside looking in because everyone was in a relationship, and I mean like from middle school to high school and like onwards in life, it always seemed like people were looking to be in relationships or were in a relationship, and I never like had those desires, I guess is the best way to put it.
Mhm.
But at the same time, like when I was like as far as like middle school and high school, I just had like so much stuff going on in my home life. Like my parents were divorcing and I was stressed out and angry, and I internalized it, so my focus wasn't on stuff like relationships. It was just I was a really angry kid. Like I even remember I was the bully on the bus for like 2 years in middle school. I was like that person that people talk about. Like I would talk about people, and like I remember my mom calling me into her room one day because like I don't know if the bus, like somebody called her and they were like, we have heard that like you've been like talking shit to kids on the bus. That, I mean, obviously I didn't say it like that. And I remember my mom confronting me about it, and I was like, she was like, why are you doing this? And I really didn't know why. I didn't understand why I was doing it at the time. Not that that's an excuse or anything, but I don't know. I just like was lashing out. So that just, um, I don't know. It's
Did
just
her
something.
stopping you make you stop? I mean, did her talking to you make you stop?
Yeah, hell yeah. Like, cause well, one, I didn't want to get in trouble anymore, and two, like, it made me like think about what I was doing, and I was gonna say like I just kind of didn't have any self control at that time. Like I was just doing it, like, and I didn't recognize. Like now, like people will say like hurt people or whatever, but
Right. You didn't
and
realize it.
yeah, I had no consciousness of it or what I was doing, and that I was insecure and that I was angry and that I was taking it out on other people. And like I don't know, I didn't realize that or have that kind of self-control until like much later in life, because when I think about it, like I would in high school, I would like talk about other people. I mean, I think people did that in high school. Not that it's an excuse, but like now I kind of looking back, I realize like where that all generated from and where it came from, like all the anger. And then another thing that kind of I didn't really resonate with growing up was the concept of knowing what you wanted to do with your life at such a young age. Like I remember being in kindergarten and people being like, "Oh, what do you want to be when you grow up?" And I just never had it. Like as often as people would ask me that question, is how as often as my answer would change. Like
Mhm.
it would just be whatever I could think of. I would just tell them because I just want them to not like leave the subject, because I didn't know. Like I never knew what I wanted to do. And I never was thinking that far in advance. Even like there was no point. Well, kind of. I don't know. No, there's really no point. Like I could lie and be like, well, at this point I knew for sure I wanted to do this, this, and this. But no, there's it would change all the time. Like I just, and that's something that I would question. Like, why do we have to like do one thing? Why do we have to know right now? Why do we? And because I like would ask those questions and the types of responses that I would get, I always thought that I was crazy,
Mhm.
because I would see people around me like who knew these things, like they knew like who they were, like how they wanted to identify, like or like with like, oh yeah, I'm a black person, da, da, da. Like they knew who they were. Like, when you ask someone like, who are you? They're like, I'm black, I'm female, I'm da, da, da. Like they just were
Right.
on it and they knew what they wanted to be. And like I just did not ever have those answers in life. And I always felt like I was behind emotionally. I felt like I had a lot of anger in life. I felt like I was behind socially, because eventually I just like started becoming a loner when I was growing up. Like I didn't go to birthday parties, I didn't go to friends' houses, I didn't like go shopping with friends, like all the stuff that people do growing up to like help you socialize with people in the world, or like just like develop good healthy relationships with other people. Like, so I really felt like I was just, I don't know, already behind on top of being behind.
Yourself.
Yeah. Mhm. Um so after high school, I didn't go straight to college. I took some time off, and I really, really like started asking myself like, what's wrong with me? Like, what the fuck is wrong with me? When I realized like I had gone to 4 different colleges. When I left high school, I didn't go straight to college, and then I kind of went to a community college because I still didn't know what I wanted to do, what I wanted to like be getting courses in. Then I went away to college, to Indiana University, then came back and went to Indiana University, like a local campus, and then I eventually went away to college. And I calculated the other night, and Whitney, I've had over 35 jobs, and I'm not even 35 years old yet.
35?
35 jobs. Like, and granted, like some of these are like when like my first job, I was like a TA for my mom's friend when I was like in 3rd grade, and I was like helping her out during the summer or something. Like some of these were like from when I first started working. Like all of them are like from when I first started working. I don't know. I feel like I was in like 2nd or 3rd grade.
Okay, so that's when you started counting from.
Yeah, like literally from my first job up till like now.
35
But
jobs.
still, like I've had 35, like over 30. Those are the ones that I can remember, and you know my memory's not on point. So I'm like, when I think about that, I'm like, what the, like, that is not normal. Like, and all these things in my mind, like, this isn't normal. This isn't what people do. Like, when people talk about their lives, like, it's very structured, and by this age, there's this, and, like, they just are very concise with their lives. And, like, I have just not been that. Like, I've had over 35 jobs. I've, like, ventured out to either start or starting, like, 5 different businesses. Or just like creative endeavors, and like really never stuck with any of those things. Like some of them like just obviously like didn't work out. Like I worked for jobs that like closed down, or like stuff just didn't work out. Um but like I was one thing that I noticed is that like with jobs, I would always end up like not liking a lot of them. Because I would like not like the corporate culture or the lack of freedom, or not being able to like really be myself, or I would notice like there's not a lot of fairness like across the board. And that's something like even my parents will tell you, like even when I was like a young kid, like if I noticed that an adult was not being fair across the board to other people, like I would lose respect for them, and then like not like zone out for the rest of time that I knew that adult. Like that's just one thing that's always been for me, is like we're all human and like on the same level. But anyways, so I would notice different stuff like that, like what I really didn't like about working for other people, or like why they didn't work out, or why I just didn't like it. And then like for my own businesses, because I really didn't have a clue what I was doing, and I didn't really know myself enough to know that like what I really wanted or why, I would kind of like give up, or just like as soon as something would get too complicated or it would take too much effort, it would be easy for me to give up on it, because I just really didn't have the confidence, or like realize that as resourceful as I was to find jobs, like I'm really good at finding jobs, and like can get my foot in the door at any job like the first meeting. Like I'm really good at that, and I didn't really connect. Like I'm super resourceful, and like if I had used that resourcefulness for like things that I wanted to do, like I could have been more successful at those things, but I didn't realize that at the time. And things like really didn't start clicking and making sense for me. Like I didn't start seeing things that like as that I'm messed up and don't really know what's wrong with, like, trying to figure out what's wrong with me until I did leave to go to college and went to the Art Institute. I went to Atlanta, and when I went to the Art Institute, that was the first time where I realized, like, oh shit, there's like people here who are themselves legit, like they're not what society would claim is quote unquote normal. They are like free to be themselves. They like do things that they enjoy in life. They don't need permission from society to like live their lives and be happy. And I was like, oh wow, it's like actually possible to be different and still be happy and like
pursue the things you want to.
Yeah, and pursue things that actually make you happy. Where in the like society would think you can't make a living out of that. Oh, like you like to draw or you like to pick up a camera and point it at stuff. But I realized, wow, you can actually be yourself and not have to subscribe to like genders and orientations or like society's idea of what's successful to be happy in life. So that's when things like started shifting for me, kind of like my mindset on life and myself, and starting to gain more confidence in figuring out myself and who I am instead of figuring out why something was wrong with me. So that was really helpful. I eventually like learned that I could be just who I am and be cool with it. So like I learned that dating is just really not that important for me and I'm okay with that. Like I was able to accept that. Like I've gone like almost a decade in my adult life being celibate before, and I know people, and I've told people that, and they're like, well, what's wrong with you? Da, da. And like now I can accept that and know like it's just not that serious for me. I don't live my life seeking out a mate, and that's never been something that has been important to me. And now I accept that. Like, um, and so now like the fact that I was like awkward and like such a loner and insecure growing up doesn't even seem that like I see like I'm cool with that too.
It makes sense now to you, like looking back on it.
Yeah, I realize now that like everything in my journey was required for me to be who I am. Like now that I look back, I'm like, oh yeah, like this is cool. Like literally what you just said. um, Another big game changer for me in helping me change how I view my life or like my perspective on my life was that relationship, one of my past relationships. And the reason why it helped me change my perspective is because there were a lot of challenges that I wasn't used to in the relationship, but those challenges helped me realize a lot of things. They helped me grow, and that changed my perspective on a lot of things. And I was like, oh, well, maybe I can apply this concept to my whole life. Like I did an overview of my life, and I'm like, you know what? It really wasn't as bad as I thought it was. I learned so much stuff. Knowing me not knowing what I wanted to be growing up is cool because I just simply wasn't meant to do one thing. It's just that simple. I see it now as I was just meant to do a bunch of different things because when I look at it, I've learned a shit ton of skills from all those jobs that I've had. Business skills, accounting skills, management skills, skills that people pay money for, skills that people go to school for and spend like hundreds of thousands of dollars for. On top of that, like I know how I want to treat employees based on how I was treated and how I want to treat customers and my businesses moving forward. Like, I know the ins and outs of so many different industries. I know how to talk to and just in life talk to and do business with people from a lot of different backgrounds and with a lot of different personalities. And I just, in general, know what I like and what I don't like and what I want and what I don't want from life because of all these experiences that I've gone through. The number one thing that I've learned is I cannot be a healthy individual and have to wear a mask. I know for a fact that I can't work a job or live a life or do something that requires me to be anything outside of myself. I mean, that's not to say, like, I can't say I'm having a good day, even if I'm not. Like, I know, like, I'm not going to, there's a difference between just being an asshole, you know what I mean?
Right. But you're saying, like, you don't want to have a job or career or even be in a relationship where you can't be your authentic self.
Yeah, or just exist, period, and not be myself. Yeah. And through all those jobs, all my experiences, I've been able to get very solid in that and learn that.
A question that I had, was going back to you said when you came down to Atlanta at the Art Institute and seeing all the people, you know, doing so many things without fitting into like the box that we try to fit ourselves in through like grade school, you know, like certain careers you have to either go here and here.
Mm-hmm.
Really helped you realize that. What was like what was that experience for you? Like how long like you just came to AIU and you realized it? Was it like an experience that you kind of had to go through and kind of like revelation of it and like how was it like for just for like somebody else who's going through that or who's looking to have that revelation like, oh look, I can just be myself and it's okay.
Well, for me, I didn't know what to expect. I just knew that, like when I applied to the school, initially I wasn't going there to like fit in or anything or find or have this revelation. But I remember when I went, not even when I went to apply, but like the first day of classes, like walking through the hallways, and I would just saw, it was literally like a veil or like a layer or like something was lifted.
Hello? Hello? Hi.
I'm not going to announce myself. Hello? I don't know what happened because the red thing was still on, but whatever. So what's the last thing? Well, I'll just repeat it.
You were saying like it was like a veil, yeah.
Yeah, it was like a veil was lifted from over my eyes, and I was like entering a magical kingdom. And I know that sounds exaggerated, but that's how it felt. It was like, what is going on? Like the first person that I met, like we're still really good friends to this day. I was sitting outside the classroom, and this guy sat next to me, and he was like, "Hey, what's up?" And like, it was just easy to talk to people because it's like everyone there just had a knowing of like, I don't know how to put it, but it's gonna sound, it doesn't matter. Like it's, so it was just like talking to people there was like talking to people that you knew went through similar stuff growing up, where it's like, do I fit in? Like what is going, like what is life? But like you knew that you weren't the only person who had these thoughts about life, and it was just easy to be yourself and communicate with people. What exactly was your question again? Is that even? Oh, you want to know what's?
Yeah, like what? I mean, I did answer it. So, kind of like that process where people are feel like they, like you said, like growing up, you didn't feel like you fit in and isolated, and but yet AIU was kind of that place for you to.
Yeah, and you didn't necessarily.
Shell.
Yeah, not only breaking out of that shell, but also, so I was talking earlier about like not knowing where I fit in, like with different labels, and like mainly for me it was like gender labels and stuff like that, and like, well, even like with race, but that can be like a difficult topic for people. But like there, it didn't even feel like you needed a label. Like it was just like you could exist, and people were, it didn't matter. People didn't need to question anything. People didn't question anything. People didn't like judge you. It was just you exist. You're here to like create or do whatever it is you want to do, and people just were supportive of that. And that was the first like full time that I had ever felt that in my life, where it was like, damn, I don't have to explain myself. I don't have to like check off these boxes. Like I can literally just be and be happy.
Do you think that you didn't have that like sort of support at home, but like with your family?
Um, I feel like now looking back, if I had been very specific about something that I wanted to do, or like opening up about who I am, like when I first came out to my parents, they were like, okay, like we love you, like who cares? Like my mom said congratulations, my dad was like, I love you regardless, even though like I knew he didn't agree because of like religious stuff, but like I know that like I would have unconditional love at home, but
Right.
there was just like if things didn't follow certain guidelines, like you're supposed to do this after school, like you're supposed this and this these things are supposed to happen in this way, like that's how I feel like my parents thought about things. Now looking back, I know they would have been supportive regardless, but the way I interpreted things growing up, it just seemed like things had to happen on a certain path, and I
Right.
felt so much pressure from that. But now looking back, they were just like wanting me to get the best out of life and to like have some kind of guidance because they know how the world worked or works. Like from their point of view, like they just didn't want us to fall short in life, like according to how you can based on what they knew of life. So I feel like if I had been more secure and known more and like had just talked to them, it would have been fine. But I wasn't even that secure to even do that then. So
Yeah, it sounds like you wanted to protect yourself too. Like you didn't want to
mhm.
tell them something about yourself, even about like what you wanted to be when you grew up, because it didn't fit into like a
Right.
norm. So you just like, let me protect myself and my feelings and kind of keep it to myself.
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely. I didn't want to
Yeah,
even risk that.
right. Because it could like, damn, if you don't get the right response, it can really just cause you to go more even like inside of yourself, like more inward.
Yeah, and I was always that person anyways. Like before I learned to like manage my emotions, that's what I would do, is like go super inward and like become so withdrawn. Like that was my reaction anyways. And like one thing too I'll say is like when I was talking about earlier about like how I would unknowingly respond to things like with anger or um withdraw, like acting out or whatever,
Mhm.
because I would do that and like always be in trouble, I correlated like always being in trouble with like not being accepted, even though now that I look back, it's like, well, you were lashing out, and like that's why you were always in trouble. It wasn't anything to do with like
Who you were.
who I was, yeah.
Mhm.
But then I didn't realize, like I wasn't putting pieces together until later in life when it's like, oh, okay.
Right, hindsight.
Like, okay. Clearly brought that on upon myself. But yeah, so that's why when I went to AIA in Atlanta, why everything was so, why it was so different. Like it, and in a way, no, not till later. Yeah, that didn't happen. But yeah, that's why it was such a big shift for me, because it was what I thought was the first time
Where you can
I was
like
being
freely
accepted
express
for myself.
yourself.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No
Yeah.
judgment, just like be you and do what you
Mhm.
want to do for like once.
Yeah. But like we said, hindsight. Because shout out to my parents. Like they've been supportive like through my whole life, no matter what I wanted to do. I just didn't realize that that's what they were being. You know.
Right. They're like, Kristen, that's what
Yeah. Like wait, what?
I meant.
But I will say, like, as far as me feeling emotionally and socially behind, I think that it did benefit me because it allowed me to see life through a different perspective and from different, different perspectives outside of like the quote unquote norm.
Mhm.
So like now, I think that I'm able to, like when I'm communicating with people, like I can see things from, like it might seem far off to them, but like when people have even told me like, wow, you made me see, like think about things in ways that I probably never would have even thought about them. So like I think I can bring a different perspective to things because like yeah, I thought it was really negative back then, but now like I'm grateful even for that because of like the different kind of viewpoints I can take in life.
Right.
So like yeah, I had a shit ton of jobs. Yeah, like I feel like I was emotionally and socially stunted in life, but like when I think back on it, like there's been like a lot of benefits from it.
Right.
On
Now
top
you
of
have
it.
like a lot of wisdom that,
Mhm.
and you're using that wisdom now in what you're doing.
Yeah.
So you kind of see how
Exactly.
it comes full circle.
And it's so crazy, like on this constant search of like who am I, what am I supposed to be doing, and then one day it just like hits me all at once, and it's like you've been asking all this time like what the fuck is wrong with me, and like now I just realized like there was nothing ever wrong, like everything was lining up exactly how it was supposed to. So
Can you like go into that revelation for, especially other people who feel that way? Kind of, like how did you work through that and get through that and get to that revelation?
um so for me it was kind of happening in the middle of the last job that I had where I was like, man, I've seen this cycle so many times where I'll start a job and be super excited and then start seeing like how there's these politics and these games that are always played. Like it's a never ending cycle and it's like, well, why do I keep doing this to myself? Like why don't I just do and find what makes me happy?
Mm-hmm.
And that like led me to all the questions like, okay, well, what makes me happy? Like what? And then I was like, okay, well, what doesn't make me happy? So like going through all the things about working for other people that didn't make me happy, and then realizing like all the things that I've learned from all the jobs and experiences that I've had. It's like, oh, okay, cool. So like these are the skills that I've acquired. And then like, okay, so what can I do with this? Or like what do I enjoy doing that wouldn't feel like work? So like really taking the time to sit and be with myself and reflect on my life and like when people say do the work, like legitimately do the work, not like some surface shit. Like, I spent a lot of time in isolation. Yeah, we're back to isolation. But this time it was in isolation, but it was like in meditation. It was like in prayer. It was in like really doing the work and spending time knowing, trying to figure out myself. And then it like hit me. It was like, this is the reason why all this stuff has happened, because one, you needed to get to this point, but two, like, you're not the only one who wants to know, like, what you can do for a living based on what you enjoy doing, and based on, like, breaking outside the norm and not feeling like you have to comply, which you've been trying to do your whole life, and it's just not been working out. So, like, and you see that it's possible. You've seen that it's possible to not have to fulfill the norm. So, like, I was just having all these revelations and asking myself so many questions and going super deep. And then things started clicking. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, I can literally do anything I put my mind to, because I've been doing that in areas that I didn't really want to. So why not spend that energy and time doing something that I want to do? So it's kind of just that deep dig, that deep dive into myself, and then getting creative and like making solutions for myself, that it doesn't matter what it looks like on the outside. Other people, I can do literally what I want to do.
Yours is kind of like self-therapy. You know,
yeah.
Like saying like, hey, I'm going to like work on myself, because in the stories we'll hear this season, we'll hear people who, you know, went to therapy, and like everybody has their own different ways of, you know, getting through stuff, and yours is like, okay, I'm going to self-reflect, separate, you know, like turn off TVs, turn off everything that's kind of distracting me.
Yeah,
and, like,
that's literally what I had to do.
Make yourself face yourself. You know what I mean? Like, sit down with just you. Which some people can't even do.
And I don't want to take that away from people like who go to therapy. Like, I think it's beneficial for people to go to therapy if they're not finding that they're like breaking free of certain things.
Right, and it depends on the situation too. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like for me, I knew that, I don't know why I didn't consider therapy. I think because I dealt with so much alone growing up, that I knew it was possible for me to just, if I focused on it, like what I did, I like you said, turn off all the electronics. I actually did a 7-day digital detox. Like, I even texted my parents. I was like, y'all are not going to hear from me for 7 days. Like, I'm turning my phone off. And they were like, is everything okay? I was like, I shouldn't even have said anything. I should have just gone cold black.
They're like, let's talk before
like,
you
that
go
was
on
an
it.
alert. Like, it did not even need to be. Jesus Christ. That's like saying, hey, don't worry, everything's fine. And, like, no one was worried in the first place, so now they're worried.
Right. Now they're like, what's wrong?
Right.
Why are you telling us not to worry when we weren't worried?
Yeah, so, like, I did that. Like, I turned everything off, and, like, I decided to write a list of, like, the things that I was doing, like, the things that, so I wrote down, like, downloading and uploading, because to me, that's, like, the things I was taking in and things I was putting out, like, things I was doing. I, like, became super self-aware. Are you there?
Yeah.
Okay. Like, made a point to become super self-aware of, like, the things I was doing on a day-to-day basis, like, and get a bird's eye view of, like, what I was doing. And, like, be specific about it. Like, how do I feel while I'm doing this? Why am I doing this? Am I benefiting from this? Like, even, like, stuff I was eating and drinking. Like, why am I doing these things? And then, like, looking back a few days later, like, okay, why was I doing these things? How did I feel when I was doing them? Um, and then, it really goes down to the why for me, why I was doing those things, what the things I was doing that didn't make me feel good, why was I doing those? And then, breaking those things down, what was I taught that made me feel like I had to do those things? Why, if I really am this unhappy in going to this job, what belief system was instilled in me to make me feel like I have to do this as opposed to doing whatever it is? So then I kind of rewired myself from doing all that. And literally, like you said, I guess it was self-therapy. And I never thought about that. But from figuring all that stuff out, it was you know what? I deserve what I want in life, what I want out of life, or at least to try, put as much effort as I put into working so hard for other people. I deserve to at least go 100% finally on something that I really want to do. And just seeing how it works out. It's clearly not been working out. Yeah. So, shit, what do I have to lose at this point, you know? So yeah, I just gave it everything. And I mean, I actually made the decision after the last job I left. I was I am never going to work for someone ever again. I told myself that. I signed the terms and conditions of that to myself, and I have accepted it. And I mean, I've had so many people call me for jobs and stuff that I had forgotten I applied to, and and they would call at random times, and I'm this is a test, and I know it's a test.
Right.
Because it's coming at such a random time. When I probably feel like I could be, it was in the times when I was the weakest, they would call, and I'd be okay. Well, that's just further proof that I need to just keep moving forward, that I'm on the right track. But, so yeah, that was my process to realizing I'm not crazy. Everything's fine. Everything actually worked out perfectly. I was writing out my skills and everything that I've learned from my journey, and I'm damn, people pay hundreds of thousands of dollars for these things to know these some of this stuff.
Right, and there you have so much of it.
Yeah, and through the whole time I thought something was so off and wrong with everything, but yeah.
And it's kind of you just have to trust your journey, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and it's so hard sometimes.
Yeah, it is. It is.
So
Can be hard to trust and to take a risk, but you don't want to regret it or be stuck in a position for years forgetting the dreams that you had.
yeah, not I think, but you and I have worked together before, and I remember it wasn't, I don't know if it was a pact, but we were we are not going to be the people that are at a job for 30 years and are angry. Because we knew people at that job, right, that were so angry every single day, and we're yo, we can't, end up being this. And that was years ago, and, we've done several things individually since then, but, we had to do that.
Right.
To get to a point where.
So, what would be your advice? Somebody say, hey, I'm going through the same thing, but I'm kind of at the beginning. Maybe they're not even the artist, but they just feel like they don't fit into they don't really know who they are yet, but they're not really sure how to find it. What would be your advice?
I would say literally what you just said, which is trusting your journey and knowing that you're exactly where you need to be for a reason. So there are a few things I would say. Turn shit off and spend time with yourself. do the work. Like, write down what it is about what's happening right now in your life that you don't like, and then figure out why it is you don't like that. Like, is what you don't like about school or work or whatever it is you're doing or the relationship you're in, like, what is it that you don't like about that? And then ask yourself why you think it should be different. Like, why do you think it's supposed to be a different way? And, like, do the work to figure out what in your past, like, taught you, like, did you see something somewhere where you saw someone doing something that you feel like you could be doing, or did you learn somewhere that, like, there should be more freedom in your life? I don't know. Like, figure out what it is that you don't like and get creative and start making, like, solutions in your present moment. Like, okay, maybe you need that job right now to pay your bills or whatever it is, but figure it out. Like, take the time to learn what it is you really love doing. Like, take some art classes or go on YouTube and, like, find different hobbies and stuff like that to figure out stuff that you do like doing so that you can spend some time being happy in your days. I would say figuring out what it is you like. So, like, in your situation, whatever your situation might be now, where you're unhappy, not only focusing on what isn't making you happy, but finding the positives of where you are. Like, if you're at a job that you don't like, write down, like, all the skills that you're learning, and it doesn't have to be on the job skills. Like, are you learning, like, most jobs you communicate, you talk to people. Like, are you learning new communication skills that you didn't have before? Are you learning about people from different cultures, from people you work with or people that you deal with on the customer side? Like, what kind of cool things are you learning? Like, start looking at, like, each day in a different way. Like, wow, I get to learn this or do this or experience this.
Find the good in it.
Yeah, which is, it's kind of difficult hearing that when you're in it and you're so unhappy, like, if you are unhappy. But if you can start with small things, like for me, when I was at jobs that I really didn't like, if I had the opportunity to, like, listen to my headphones during the day, like, that was such a small thing, but it was like, it brought me so much joy because I, like, got to tune out a lot of stuff and, like, got to listen to whatever I wanted to listen to. Like, just finding little things was a really big game changer for me. But I think the most crucial thing is taking the time to know yourself fully, like, really get to know yourself. Not like, oh, I like blue, I like R&B and pop. Like, I mean, deep dive and get to know yourself. And, like, if that means you do need to speak to someone to get you, like, a coach or a therapist that can help you ask the questions to get you there, then do that if you can't do it for yourself. But, like, really deep dive, and that will, like, open up, like, you'll literally bust through so many boxes and so many, like I was saying earlier, the veils will be, layers and layers will be lifted when you start diving deep and, like, really, like, learning about yourself. And the limits that you thought were there will be removed, but it can't happen if you're not, like, tuned into yourself. Like,
and working on yourself.
Yeah, it's just going to be a constant cycle unless you, like, deal with what's going on in that moment and, like, heal it and figuring stuff out. Like, it's going to be work, and it's not always going to be fun, but I mean, that's a choice too. Like, it could be fun if you decide that it is. But when you're really at a low level and, like, really lost and, like, angry and, like, trying to figure stuff out, it can be difficult to just make a leap from that level to joy immediately. But just take baby steps. Talk to people if you need to. People who are supportive or who have been there. I think if you talk to people, like too many just anybody's, they may not understand it. They might question like, oh, why are you spending so much time alone? And then like you might stop digging deep and diving deep and like because you're trying to contour yourself to what other people think is right or wrong.
Right.
So just really making the decision to get to know yourself and sticking to it. Becoming more self-aware, so.
Right, and that's probably the best advice. Our favorite saying. The best advice that
I could take.
So many people who are just like, I just feel like, I know for me personally, my goal is to not to forget my dreams and goals, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
By getting caught up in so many other things that's going on.
Has that happened to you before?
No, not yet. And it won't, but I've always been so aware of it. I've always been so aware, like, you know, that's what I've always said, like, oh, I know I'm at this place for a reason, something to learn, but I know I won't be here for long, and I won't let myself be here, you know, past my time.
That's so good
to be here.
Because that's when, and then when I think about it, like that's my lowest moments were when I wasn't thinking like that, when I was just so deep into disliking whatever was going on that I wasn't thinking about what I was learning. I wasn't reminding myself like, but there's more. There's like there's something that there's something greater. There's stuff that you want to do. Like I wasn't in that thought process, and it was causing me to get so low and so low and so low.
And frustrated because you didn't know how to like break through that, and like break those walls down so you could, but like no, you know, I want to do this, and it's totally unconventional, but that's okay.
Yeah, so you're right. I love that. Just don't forget what it is that you want to do, and even if you don't know specifically what it is, like I know that there's
it's not.
Yeah, you know exactly. You know that this ain't it. Like, and because you're so unhappy somewhere, you know that there's somewhere for you that's better, and like you're learning exactly what you don't like, which I think is so crucial. Like I think we're taught that if you don't like something, it's bad. But one of the best things that I've learned is like, as important as knowing what you do like is knowing what you don't like. And for me, there are a lot of things I didn't know I did like until I knew what I didn't like. So, like, it's all working together. But, yeah, like you said, just knowing and reminding yourself, like, yo, this is just temporary. I'm on my way to something that I really actually want to do. I love that.
Right. Just keep working on that.
Mm-hmm.
Keep working on it. Yeah.
And if you do know what it is, like just do little things here and there if you can't dedicate so much time to it. But always be, like every day do one thing, whether even if it's just like researching something on your lunch break. But do one thing each day to move closer towards what it is you want to do. Even if it's researching different things to figure out what you want to do. If you're spending so much time at something that you don't enjoy doing, make sure that you at least spend a few minutes towards what you do want to do or figuring it out to build that momentum.
I love that. Well, anything else you want to add before we? Because you've given out a lot of great advice.
No, I think that's it. Like, just remember that none of it's for naught. Like, it's all for a reason. I know, even if it doesn't feel like it right now, like, it's all working out. And where you put your energy is how things are going to keep going. So, like, set your intentions to whether you're believing things are working out for a reason or not. But, like, what worked best for me was deciding that things were working out for a reason and that believing that it's a friendly universe and all things are working out for the best. That was helpful for me. So Yeah. Be positive. Talk to people. That's all I got.
That's full of wisdom. But thank you so much for sharing this story. Thank
You're
you
welcome.
for you. And so K10's story is one of many that she'll be sharing. We both will be sharing stories throughout the seasons. Okay, let me do that over again.
Okay.
There's so many.
It was so good, though.
Okay, thanks.
Like, I was like, girl, why are you starting? I mean, but if you want to, but it sounded really good.
Don't laugh. Don't laugh.
Hey.
Thank you for you and sharing this story. KT and I both will be sharing stories throughout the seasons, our own personal stories, wisdom that we picked up along the years that we think can be helpful. We have more stories coming out. We'll be releasing a story once every week from people that we've reached out to and said, hey, do you have a story or have you been through an experience, whether it's kind of like your whole life journey or a certain specific thing that you went through that you think sharing it can help somebody else who's going through it. So once again, K10, thank you for sharing your story. And
You're welcome. Thank you.
And to all you guys listening, please comment, leave any feedback, even if you have your own pieces of wisdom or your own story that you want to leave. We would love to hear it, and we may even share it. So thank you so much for listening.
Thank you, guys.
Bye.
Bye.
If you enjoyed this week's podcast, please help us spread this story by
subscribing however you're listening, rating this podcast, and commenting and following on our social media.
And thank you for you.